So we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to ask the birthday boy to lead us today.
All right, all rise. Repeat after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Two.
It's a Boy Scout. Got it. All right, at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Individuals wishing to address the city council are requested to complete a speaker card and deliver the card to the city clerk prior to the item being heard by the city council. Please observe a 3-minute limit for communications, and once called upon to speak, we request that you state your name and your city of residence for the record. We're going to start off with communications from the public. This portion of the agenda is intended for general public comment only on items within the council's jurisdiction that are not listed elsewhere on the agenda. Please note that state law prohibits city council from discussing or taking action on these items. Please observe a 3-minute limit for communications, and once called upon to speak, we request that you state your name and city of residence for the record. Ms. Edwards, do we have any speaker cards for communications from the public?
No, we do not.
Great, and congratulations, by the way, on your certification.
Thank you.
Master.
Yes, that's how we
Master.
shall always
Master.
refer
Sorry.
to you now.
Master.
We have the
Thank you.
salute.
Master Edward, yeah, there's some kind of, special hat or something. All right, so we're going on to the first items. Our first item, which is a update on the sales tax information from our friends from HDL.
Great, thank you. So you want the good news first today then?
Always.
Okay.
No, I always want the bad news first.
All right, so it is good news. Ken Brown again, HDL Companies, pleasure to be here with you today. Going to provide a update on sales tax revenues and the economy for how businesses are doing both in Corona and also throughout the region and throughout the state. And this is for second quarter, is the latest data that we have. So this is the months of April through June of 2022 versus the same period a year ago to try and take out the seasonality and provide a good comparison. So next slide, please. And so we always start out with the first slide provides an overview of how Corona's year-over-year sales tax grew. And we also provide, thank you, the results compared to Riverside County, Southern California, and California as a whole. And we're up right about 10% in all those statistics. So very good result for the second quarter. And you can see here on the next slide, this is our comparison of Corona over time. This is a line graph. Corona's up top in green compared to Riverside County, Southern California, and California lines. And so this is per capita sales tax. And so this is the amount of money that is generated, or tax revenue generated per resident in Corona compared to these other areas. And so Corona continues to be well above these other metrics. Next, we're actually digging in a little bit here and looking at some trend lines comparing Corona, which is the green line down below. Now, these lines are going to vary a bit based on sales tax base. Some cities choose to develop a little differently than others, and some have different strengths and weaknesses and different concentrations in various industry groups that can be good sometimes and bad in other times. But this is, over time, you can see it's pretty consistent. This is comparing Corona, which is the green line. And this is also per capita sales tax revenue compared to Ontario, and then Temecula, and then below that, Riverside, City of Riverside, and also Rancho Cucamonga, Murrieta, and Lake Elsinore.
I'm colorblind, so these are terrible, but I think I kind of get it. But thank you for reading them in the order. So
Yeah, I'll try and make sure I read those in the order for you.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. The same thing.
Okay, so
I can see.
thanks for the reminder. So,
Right. No, it's
so
fine.
I'll start up at the top on the right-hand side. So this is the same graph, but up top there's Eastvale, and then second is Norco, and then Corona, and then Jurupa Valley finally.
What did Norco do different?
Amazon.
Norco, actually, they've got several new large
CarMax.
used car dealerships that have opened up in the last couple of years. And so they've also got a pretty high concentration in that category. And so that has boosted them because that's been a strong category the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And so in terms of focusing back in on Corona, results compared to last year, you see it here by what we call major industry group. And so overall, we talked about earlier, 9.7% growth. That translates into $1.2 million compared to the same period a year ago, improvement in terms of revenues. And as you can see, the bulk of that improvement, I mean, first of all, it's great just to sit back and look, and that everything here, aside from a $1,000 dip in food and drugs, is positive. You know, that's wonderful to see. The biggest, though, growth area is in the fuel category, which is no surprise with the sky-high gasoline prices that we're all paying right now. Certainly, tax revenue, therefore, went up a corresponding amount, and so that explains quite a bit, nearly half of the overall change this quarter. But there was also some nice growth in some of the other categories as well. Pretty much everything except for food and drugs was up a little bit this quarter. And then turning to those same major industry groups, but giving you a look over time at how those graphs have trended. First up on the top there, I'll start with the top, building and construction. That remains very stable, certainly has improved from 2Q19, 13 quarters ago. You can see it's at a higher level, as are most of these major industry groups. Second down would be general consumer goods, and that is also quite a bit higher, but starting to slow down a little bit. I think consumers are starting to feel pressured by the high inflation rates, high gas prices, and also maybe reverting some of their spending back to restaurants, travel, and other things. During the pandemic, they might have spent more on some goods when they couldn't, you know, do a lot of things, get outside the house and travel. So that might be slowing down a little bit. We're starting to see signs of that. The next line down is the orange one, state and county pools. And that really grew a lot since about 2019. That's where a lot, it's not solely internet money, but a lot of internet money goes to that location, that major industry group. And so there was a law change back in 2019 that really boosted the amount of tax revenue. It really stemmed from a Supreme Court decision, which we've talked about in the past. But then California and many other states throughout the country, I think most states, implemented it with enabling legislation, which really boosted that line up over time. And then below that is business and industry, which has been you know, up and down. There's a lot of ebbs and flows. But autos is the final line down there. And autos, as you can see, has really grown. Back in 2Q19, it looks like it was about $1.2 million a quarter, and now it's well over $1.6 million a quarter. So local auto dealerships are doing quite well.
So Kim, before you go on, so the county and state pools being flat is really related to Eastvale's change. One wholesaler's change.
Yeah, I think that's the bulk of it. That's the bulk of the change. And then also I would just say that we are starting to see some online sales starting to slow coming out of the pandemic as well. As folks shift their spending, like I went crazy on online shopping during the pandemic, and I'm trying to wean myself off. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in my shoes that are doing this.
That's about, I mean, if you go back to Q4 in 2020, it's about $1 million difference.
Yeah, let's see. It looks like, so it's
That's when they made their change, right?
they made their change.
Yeah.
It was in,
Q4
it was in it was 1Q20, I think it was the
Yeah,
change,
so-
yeah.
So it was, the initial hit was over $1 million.
Actually, 1Q21 was, you can see it sort of flatten out ever
Right.
since then. 1Q21 was when we first saw that.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's kind of flattened out a little bit. And so I think that's really a combination of that factor, but also folks like me paring back the
Just
online
feeling
shopping
pick
a
up
little
money?
bit. Yeah.
Send a track.
Thanks.
Okay. And then finally, the remaining three major industry groups for Corona, fuel and service stations. That is the top line. That's just a rocket ship right there. So certainly some ebbs and flows. We're used to seeing a lot of volatility in fuel prices and demand. Certainly during the pandemic, that fell off a cliff, but now it's just shooting up like a rocket. So that's really interesting to see. And then similarly, it's not quite as volatile, but restaurants and hotels also certainly were very challenged during the pandemic. And they're back now, and they're in fact not only fully recovered, but speeding ahead. And so you can see they've grown since 2Q19 over on the far side of the graph. Not a lot, because there's been a lot of movement up and down in between, but certainly a growing category to this day. And putting it all together, it looks like over the last 13 quarters, Corona has enjoyed sales tax growth of about 20.3%. That's the long-term trend right there. And moving on from Bradley Burns sales tax, the 1% sales tax that the city gets, I wanted to just spend a minute because focusing in on Corona's Measure X, the voter-approved district tax, and just note that it went into effect, this is now 4 full quarters, a full year of data that we have for Measure X. And so we do have 1 year's worth of results, and the district tax measure brought in $41.4 million. And that's additional from the Bradley Burns that we already talked about. And it came in at about 80.7% of the Bradley Burns revenue. So some might ask, why is it a little bit different? And so the main reason is typically the same goods are taxed. It's just that they're taxed a little bit differently. So what I mean by that is for the district tax, sometimes when business and industrial or building construction firms, they may negotiate a sale in Corona and you would get the Bradley Burns tax revenue here. But if they're shipping outside the city to another jurisdiction, you would not get the Measure X revenue on that. And so that's why it can be a little bit different. And I look at this as a pretty big success. I think maybe about 3 years ago, I think I did an estimate, an analysis and an estimate of how much tax revenue it would bring in. And I think we were trying to estimate imports and outports in and out of the city. And I think we were estimating maybe a little over 70%. In terms of a ratio, it came in at 80%. So I attribute that mostly to one of the biggest factors, I think, is that legislation change that we talked about earlier, AB 147 Wayfair, that allowed the taxation of additional internet sales. And those were so strong as well and have been so strong, growing so fast. So I think that lifted up revenues a little bit. That was one of the larger factors, but a very successful close to the year for that.
Great.
And that concludes my presentation. I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions? Tom?
Tomorrow's inflation report, good, bad?
It's probably going to be pretty high, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Tony?
No.
I'm good, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, on to our next item, which is historic route signs. Savat Kampu, our Public Works Director, and is Rosie here? I don't see Rosie. Oh, there she is. Our city traffic engineer, here she comes with the displays.
Ooh, the displays.
All right, we love props. I'm sorry, Miss Edwards, I didn't ask if we had any speaker cards for the
Mayor, we did not.
HDL. Okay, thank you. Awesome.
0.63 gauge aluminum sign,
Isn't that great? Those are gorgeous.
3M sheeting, diamond grade.
Very pretty.
Oh, nice. Blocking the pretty signs.
That's one
It's okay, Master.
All right. Welcome and thanks.
So we're ready? Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about the historic route signs, and with me I have Savat Kampu and Mr. Richard Nguyen with the Corona Historic Preservation Society. So today's ask is we would like to ask for some feedback on the request from the Corona Historic Preservation Society's interest in installing signage along the historic routes that go throughout the city. So a little bit of history on these historic routes that we're talking about. I'm going to show you a quick illustration. So in 1948, this is the oldest imagery I can find in some archives that actually show which is US Route 91, State Route 18, and State Route 71. 71 used to go and approximately by where Prado Dam is today, and go down towards what you would call Dos Lagos, and then 18 and the 91 were just going east-west, connecting LA to pretty much Vegas, right?
What year was this?
Today-
Is it 1948? Okay. Duh.
I was gonna circle it. There it is.
Thank you. Sorry, Rosie.
No
was a test.
problem.
Yeah.
And this is what Corona looks like today. This is the same routes, just
What year
superimposed.
is this?
This is 2022.
It says it right there at the top, Tom.
Today.
Apparently I missed it.
As you can see now, what used to be the 91 and the 18 is now what we know as Sixth Street, a little bit of Palisades, pieces of Green River, and it actually continues, Orange County, and then it actually, the 91 and the 18 become Magnolia. And the 71 kind of went away. It was shifted way westward, and we just have segments of it remaining today, which are our actual roadways. So a little bit of background. Mr. Richard Nguyen came to us a couple years ago asking if we can install and pay some homage to these historic routes along the city roadways. And we did a little bit of evaluation. We took a look at all the locations that he initially requested, and we were able to look to see if there were any signs that were, feasible, available, didn't have any other conflicting signs like warning signs or military banners and such, and we came up with a few locations to share. What will this look like? I was able to superimpose one of these signs onto an existing picture. This is just photoshopped, and it will look like that. So as you can see to my left, we have the actual signs. This is the true size of them, what they look like. These are the signs that will be installed if we choose to do so. And but once they're up high, they don't see.
Yeah, that looks like maybe a little bit bigger than it would normally,
Oh,
because
yeah,
I mean,
they're
just looking at the width of the street light versus how wide the sign is.
The middle one, for reference, that's kind of the size of our street lights, the red, yellow, and green.
It's a rendering, Wes. Not to scale. Does it say not to scale on this?
It does not. It should, huh?
I thought that was a pretty good.
Yeah, it's close.
I thought this
Yeah.
was pretty dang close.
Good job.
Thank you. So the signs, I know, right side up, right? Yeah. So the signs will be furnished by the Corona Historic Preservation Society. The signs will have no cost to us. They will be installed by Public Works staff, so the cost will be just hardware and staff time. Like as mentioned before, locations were chosen jointly between the two teams. And all signs meet federal and state guidelines for size, color, design. So that just means that we're using the right brown, the right reflectivity, the right thickness, and such standard size.
Yeah, and it's distinguished because it won't be confused with the blue shields and the green shields that are already out there.
And where will they go? Right here, proposed sign locations. We have a few going along Green River Palisades. That's where we'll have the 9118 indicators. Then as you continue on to Sixth Street, more into the downtown, we'll have two of those large signs. And once again, this is only the locations that were available and made sense to install. And then further down, the old historic 71 would be down Main Street, down Ontario, where it becomes Temescal. And then also note,
Sorry, I'm so sorry to jump in. Is it, so it's every little dot is where the sign will be? Okay.
the total of 18 signs.
Signs, all right.
And they are within city limits. Anything outside of city limits, Mr. Richard Nguyen will reach out to the county and the other jurisdictions. So the locations we are talking about are only within our limits. And the cost, once again, the cost will be free to us, but the hardware is approximately $1,000 and staff time is about 70 to 80 hours.
Do you have a cost for that? 70 to 80 hours?
Depends on the person, so,
$1,000
yeah.
times it by 100.
Say $50 an hour.
And that's a very rough estimate. And then once again, we ask if we'd like to discuss and provide any feedback that we can get from you guys on the request from the Historic Preservation Society to install these signs along the city. Oh, one more slide, I apologize. Seems out of order, sorry. So some of the pros are, identify and pay some homage to the historic routes in the city. It is a limited cost to us because the signs are donated from the Historic Preservation Society. And the con, as Jackie noted, is the cost of city staff time and mounting hardware.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Jackie, you want to go first?
So about $50 an hour, I don't know how to do, we're looking at about $4,000 plus the $1,000 for hardware. And so the original signs are donated, but if they need to be replaced, that'll be on city's
Nope.
dollar.
It'll be-
CHPS will take care of it. Can I ask maybe a silly question, aside from just preserve, like, why, the sign, why are we pursuing this project?
Cities throughout the county, San Bernardino County, Los Angeles County, mark significant highways as historic routes. Route 66, you've all heard about that one, right?
Yeah,
395 is another one
yeah.
that goes, I'm not sure where it goes, but it ends up in San Diego County.
And they do it this way as well? With
Yeah.
Big signs like
Same,
this?
same style sign, same everything.
Okay. All right.
Tom?
I just have a question. What is the blue dot? What does the blue dot say?
That actually has a fun story. I'll let him share.
Okay, up until 1939 or so, the signs were provided by the Southern California Automobile Club all over the western states. They were all done by the AAA. So their seal is at the bottom of the signs. It says SoCal Auto.
It's really, it's not necessarily something for them, it's this is a reproduction of the signs, the shields and how they were done.
Just makes them feel more authentic.
Yeah, I just didn't know what it was.
Yep, very closely. You'd have to be up there, but no one's gonna see
When I
it.
first brought these to the city, it was like talking a hippopotamus and a giraffe. Because nobody in the Public Works Department was old enough to have ever seen one of these signs on the roadway. Now, half my life I've ridden with those signs on the highway, so I knew where I was going. But it was very interesting that neither Caltrans nor Auto Club had copies of the shields. So I was up visiting my daughter in Utah, and 91 actually starts in Long Beach and ends up in southern Idaho. And so I was up there and visiting her, and I said, maybe UDOT has something. And so I called the office and I said, I'm looking for a replica sign for US 91. And the traffic person said, well, it's still active here in the state, northern part of the state into southern Idaho. I'm sure we have one. Give me a few minutes. 2 minutes later, I got a good one right here. And she said, it saves you having to drive up and take a picture into Cache Valley. So they just sent me an email with the
logo.
with the 91. I was surprised that you couldn't find those in historical files. But on the other hand, computers weren't around till the 80s, in use. So everything that Caltrans looked at, everything that Auto Club looked at was a paper folder. What have they got?
Well, I think this is a good idea. Will you please, I guess this is a request, will you please send your presentation to the Heritage Room? Because I've been in there when people have been in trying to figure out the signs. So
Okay.
I think that information would be helpful for them in research. That's where I'm at.
Okay, Tony?
Locations that are suggested to put this, are they close to the freeway entrance? Or like some of these blue dots?
Yeah, that was kind of an initial concern, not particularly like the SR 71, that's actually Yorba. So you would have to be turning into Yorba, which kind of dead ends right before the 91, the little red one, right above the green. That's gonna be on a post, so not even close to the 71. All the other ones are just along.
That's where the name Yorba came from, that street.
Yeah, none of them are close to the interchanges.
Because isn't the 91 now considered a state route?
Yes, but back then it was called the US Route 91.
Yes, I'm just concerned that there might be some confusion to drivers because I don't think there's not going to be a whole lot of people today that know that this was a historic route of some sort. I'm just concerned that some people would see the sign and they're looking for a freeway entrance.
We wouldn't have any directional arrows or any cardinal directions. I know.
I mean, common sense. You see a sign like that and you may be looking for a freeway entrance, and if you're looking for the 18 and there's no 18, it might be a little confusing. Other than that, I'm indifferent either way. My only request would be is that we don't start installing signs until all the signs are secured. Right, because I would imagine that in order to produce these signs, it doesn't happen overnight. So I'd rather have all of the signs in possession before we start putting them up, just because at that point, it's 2 weeks worth of work to get them all up.
And it won't be all done at the same time, it'll be on staff availability.
Sure,
Our, daily duties.
sure, I get that, but I would rather have them all there rather than, in order to complete the route, right, you need to have all of the signs put up in a timely manner. So if we're waiting for signs to be produced, then I would say let's wait till all the signs are produced and then put them up.
I think the idea is that they would put them up as they were doing work in those areas. They wouldn't purposely go out and have the truck go put them all up at the same time. And they would be produced all at the same time, right? Yeah.
Well, if you said we wanted to do the 71 first, I'd have those done first.
No,
I know what you're saying.
yeah,
But I think in practicality, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're gonna put them out based on the work that you're already doing. You're not gonna have a special crew go put up a bunch of signs. You're gonna be, we're gonna be working on this area, you're gonna put up signs in this area.
We can wait until all the signs are received first.
Yeah, okay.
as you know, Wes, it's not our job to get into operations. We just make up.
That's why I was asking the question.
I love
That's why I was asking the question.
Record it.
Say it again into the phone, please.
I think
Some
it was,
playback.
you made Jacob's new ringtone.
Then I would consider 71.
Okay, yes, sir.
I have one problem. This triple sign, if I'm reading that correctly, we've only got 2 signs and they're both heading eastbound.
Right.
The westbound ones were originally planned to be on posts that were not committed to anything else. But since the banner program was installed, there are at least 2 of them. The one on 6th Street between Main and Bell. That was a perfect one. It's right there in the alleyway. We tried to do signs at the start, wherever the route starts. And then somewhere in the mid, no closer than a mile apart. That was the original goal. So I'm concerned that we don't have any of the triple signs going westbound on 6th Street. When we planned this, I came and talked to Naomi, was that who it was, up here? I asked her, can we get the names of the people whose sons or daughters are memorialized on these 2 or 3 things and see if we can move them to another one?
I'm not really interested in that.
Yeah, I did not recommend any locations that were used, especially.
Yeah,
with
moving military banners is
Yeah, I didn't.
That'll get a little touchy.
yeah, it'd be a tough deal.
Of
Yeah.
death.
So let's go with these first, and then maybe there's a point we can revisit this later on and see if there's any change there, but I think this is a good start.
Well, my suggestion there is when a military banner expires on a post that is and was committed to this program before the military banners came into significance, then another military banner does not go up there. One of these signs goes up there.
I'm not in favor of replacing a historic sign from a military banner. If there's a post that has a military banner and that banner comes down, I'd like another military banner to go back up. That's, to me, is more important than these signs.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Correction.
Council, thanks for the direction.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, Ms. Edwards, do you have any speaker cards for this item? All right, I'm gonna go on to number 3, which is Women's Victory Service Club flag and conservation display. I'm having problems with my tongue today. Dr. Turner, Community Services Director, and looks like Abby as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Mayor, members of the City Council, Ann Turner, Director of Community Services. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the Women's Victory Service Flag, conservation and display. As you recall, we brought this in front of you before, and you asked us to come back to you after we had met with the conservator and kind of talk with you a little bit about what we found out and ways in which the victory flag might be displayed. So what we're asking from you today is to provide us a little bit of feedback on the conservation options that we're going to bring forward to you, provide us feedback and preference for the manner of display of the original flag, and provide us preference about displays of a replica flag. So the conservator's findings, so I don't think this will be astonishing to anyone. I mean, it was,
Also not to scale.
yeah,
Rendering.
although it is
pretty
quite,
close.
it's pretty darn close. Yeah.
good. I thought you guys hung it up. I was like,
It's-
wow, that's really
It's
cool.
actually very
Where's Tom at?
close.
Probably looking for the cord across there.
Figured Tom was holding it up.
That's Abby's excellent Photoshop work, so I do want to say that that's amazing. So it won't be any surprise to you that it was creased and wrinkled, and some of those creases and wrinkles were pretty extreme. It had been in a box and it had been folded. There was some machine stitching that was broken and loose. We had a large darkish liquid stain on it. There was uneven color loss, so the way that it had been stored, there were parts of it that had faded and parts of it that had not faded. There was stress splits, so because it had been hung, and the actual weight of the flag itself on that old stitching caused what we call stress splits, so that stitching could not hold the actual weight of the flag. There were small holes that she deemed to be insect related. There were holes at the tip of the stars from stitching, and the sleeve that, so the way the flag is made is that there's a sleeve on the back of the flag, so you would put like a rod through it and hang it that way. The sleeve had become unstitched, and the flag itself is made of a single layer of acetate with wool stars, which if we had options of different materials today, probably we wouldn't choose that. Acetate doesn't hold up very well over time. So we wanted to come to the council and give you a few options for conservation. I do want to bring to the council's attention that the conservator's recommendation is option 2. The first option is the least expensive option. It would mean that the banner would be hung by the sleeve. She again would not recommend this for a long period of time, but it could be hung and displayed by the sleeve. What she would do for that to take place was she would clean the surface with a low suction vacuum. She would test the stain for possible removal without any damage to the flag itself, if that's possible, if that's not. Humidify the hard creases and attempt to gently block out the wrinkles. Some may come out, some may not. Restitch the hanging sleeve across the top and patch the small hole forming along the join between the boarded seam. And that is your most minimal conservation of the flag. Option 2 is all of the items in option 1, but she suggests adding a lightweight polyester backing to the acetate fabric in the central part of the banner to provide some stability. And look at supporting the stars and taking some of that stress, because those stars are wool, so they're heavier than the acetate that they're sewn to, providing them some support. Supporting the fabric will be covered with a support fabric will be covered with a lightweight fabric to protect the conservation stitches, and attaching Velcro tape to evenly distribute the weight of the whole textile so that it's not leaning towards one side or the other, and it could be used to attach it to a hanging system. So that is, if you wanted to display the original flag, what the conservator recommends. And then, of course, we always like to provide you the, best possible scenario that you could ever have. And that is just about $7,000 and includes a hanging system that would be built for it. And that's a full backing of the fabric and a full lining. And that option again, runs you close to about $7,000. So before we move into display options and discussions around that, if the council has any questions about these conservation options, happy to answer those.
I do.
Sure.
Out of order, sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't remember, but can you view the flag from either side?
So no, it is a singular facing flag, so it is not one that is two-sided.
Okay, so then by putting all the stuff on the back, you're not gonna take away one of the views of the flag?
No, you will not.
Okay, and then, in option 2, that will restore the flag and reinforce it in order to be hung properly.
Yes, and again, we will discuss this when we get to a little bit about the display options, which is sort of the next part of the presentation. Really on the original flag, it will, even with this reinforcement and conservation, and even with us, getting, storing it properly and all of that, it's very fragile. And so really shouldn't be something that's hanging all the time. It should be something that you sort of bring out for some purpose and hang it and show it and allow people to see it. And then you roll it back up and let it not be so stressed, right? And you roll it back up. And again, the acetate, unfortunately, is incredibly sensitive to light. And so that is a real challenge for us on that original flag, is that you wouldn't want it hanging all the time because it'll just really fade and ultimately disintegrate even with this conservation.
Is there a suggestion in here about when would be appropriate times to hang that flag?
You always want to get ahead of me in my presentation. I'm just about to
It was a yes or no question.
So yes, we're going to talk about display options. If that covers your questions around conservation, I'm happy to move on to display.
Just one more.
Yeah?
How long does that process normally take?
It's going to be based upon her availability. So I would say, depending on what option you chose, I think a reasonable timeline is to think 6 to 8 months. We did tell her that we would really like something to, if we were going to display the original flag, we'd really like it to be ready by the spring of 2023. And so I think she would try to, work to that timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we ready?
With option 2.
Okay.
So the conservator's recommendation about the display of the flag. So the library, of all of the places that she looked, was the best place by her recommendation to display the original flag. City Hall is too bright. There's too much sun, and she said, absolutely not outside, not with the original flag. That's just like, you might hang it once and then that would be the end of the flag. She does, now you'll remember that the original flag is giant. It is 9 feet, it's 12 feet by 9 feet, so it's really quite big. And so in the library, the mezzanine area, which is right by the Heritage Room, actually provides a space where that could hang and it wouldn't hit anyone on the head as they walk through the library. So we actually do have a spot that would give it room. And if we do go for like some sort of supporting frame for the flag itself, our team in building maintenance said that as long as they got the specs from the conservator, they'd be happy to build that frame, and that's a very simple system to put together, and that they could make that frame right here in the city. So these are your display options for original and replica flag. For the original flag, we are recommending that the flag be displayed in the library. Depending on what conservation option you choose, the flag would be displayed either, with a pole by its sleeve, or reinforced and applied to a reusable frame. Our recommendation in conjunction with the conservator is that reusable frame is the better option than putting that stress on the sleeve. The display time is dependent on the conservator's recommendation, but would be limited. We know that there is great interest in having that come out on Memorial Day and Veterans Day and days, obviously, in which we remember all of those who have provided service for our country, but that the limiting that display period probably anywhere between 15 and 30 days at any one display period time. Option 2, for the original flag and replica flags, we had, as you saw, public comment from Mr. Mayfarth, which was very helpful. He gave some, he's created some files and taken the pictures we've done and done some Pantone. And he has offered a couple of different options. One, which would be a printing option, which you could do, and you could make smaller replica flags. You could print them on a nylon material, and you could have as many of those as you want. He has offered his services in helping us kind of get that coloring right and do that so we could create a replica flag. He also suggests in his public comment that a replica flag could be remade that is like the original, but using, so it would actually be sewn, either machine sewn or hand sewn on some parts. But it would be using materials now that are much more durable than acetate and wool. But it would look like this. So the suggestion of option 2 is to create a replica flag that could be placed at City Hall or any location you wanted it to. It would have great flexibility because it is a replica. And you could have as many of them as you wanted. Replica flag size would be determined, based upon the desired location and size constraints. So you could have one that mirrors the original, or you could have one that is smaller if that's more convenient for display. We're happy to research costs. Abby and I spent some time today sort of doodling and doing some math. We think that the printed replica would probably end up costing you, if you did it to size, about $1,500. If you did a recreation replica flag where it was actually sewn, it'd be, we think with a just based upon a seamstress time and the materials, you're looking closer to about $3,500.
Okay.
So those are your options for display. We are eager to hear your discussion around it and take your direction.
Okay, so I think, Tom, you didn't go yet, but I wanted to start with the conservation options. I think Jackie said she was good with 2, but I wanted to hear since this is your item.
Can I just marry everything together?
You can.
Is that all right?
We can go crazy.
My birthday.
It's your birthday. You can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want, sir.
Happy birthday, this is your gift. Nothing more.
What'd you get today? Flag conservation. Telling everybody.
Flag discussions.
Thank you. This is the best presentation ever. I love the imperfections in the flags. I love the stain. I love the stress splits. I love everything about it. I wouldn't fear any of it. And if none of it cleans or nothing vacuums out or whatever, it's all just, that's our flag. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's the effort that went into it that makes it perfect. As
I have the conservation options on the screen.
I know, I wrote notes.
Oh.
Thought I wrote notes.
On the bottom by your hand.
So horrible birthday. Oh, there it is. So, okay. I think the library is the best place for it. And I get what you guys are saying, that it should only be hung 15 days or 30 days or whatever you guys feel is best. And that probably is best for the flag. So what I'm hoping I can convince you all of is, if you don't put a system in place now, it'll be a meeting here, it'll fly once or twice, and then 6 councils from now, it'll disappear again. So if it's okay with you, I'd like, if you guys, wherever you feel best in the library, to hang it, put the original one there for 15-30 days, and then when it comes down after that, replace it with a replica. So there's always either one or the other hanging in that location. And I would guess that times to hang it for the original to be in place would be during Veterans and Memorial Days, or those weeks, or whatever you feel is right. As far as a replica for City Hall or any other building in the city, that's not the story. The story is just the flag itself. So we hang the original. When the original needs to be put away, because it's our job to take care of it, then we put the replica. And then I was talking to Jacob about this earlier. People aren't gonna know what the flag is unless we tell the story. So wherever you guys decide to hang it, if there could be some sort of plaque, or, you know what I mean, that says, this is the story of the flag, and this is why it's special. The very first gold star is the Corona that died that is still at the bottom of the New Jersey battleship in Hawaii, right? Something that tells that story, and I can get you the research if you don't already have it. And then that way, the flag never goes away, because someone will see there's a replica there, or someone will see there's an original there. And that's the system, I think, that is best to be put in place.
Okay, so,
Shoot me down.
so which one?
Jackie can't talk.
So one, or so we had option number 2?
Whatever option that I just said is,
Well, no, option number 2 has, the conservation options, there's a full backing.
let me find,
I'm sorry, I know you're skipping to the end, but
if you can do what I said with option 2, great. And then the other options, I don't think we need a replica at City Hall. I just think we need a replica for where the original would be. In fact, I'd like to keep it out of City Hall, to be honest with you.
Becky?
So I'm in favor of conservation option 2 and display option 1. But I do wanna make a statement that you're not gonna like.
She doesn't know how to talk.
And the statement is this is now the second historical preservation issue that we've had today's meeting. And some might say, you know, that other item is gonna cost us, about $6,000. This item is gonna cost us, I don't know. Together, we're looking at, over $10,000 on what some might say is a council pet project.
But didn't we have a first presentation where the sales tax was $40 million?
Right, but that's not the question. It's not the
Oh.
question about whether or not we have the money. It's whether or not we should be spending money on items like this. And so I'm putting it out there.
I get it as a big.
It's going there.
Sure.
I want us to be really conscious of the things that we're pushing forward, and we're not just funding our pet projects.
I will say, and Tom, you can jump in if you want, I'd say that yes, that you could say that folks have pet projects, all kinds of pet projects, whether you care about, affordable housing, or you care about sidewalks, or you care about that each park has 10 trees versus 11 trees. I think we all have our own interest in, but it's also saying that it's not just me and it's not just Tom. These items, and I could say that, when I talk to folks that are here, one of the biggest complaints that people have outside of the things that we can't control is that we don't respect our history, that we don't celebrate it, we don't protect it, we don't conserve it, and frankly, Tom and I have a different view of the world because of our shared experience and our interest, but we're not alone. And I think that I would rather see us preserve history. Now,
And I'm on board with preserving, but let's maybe rein it in and not do super Cadillac versions of things, right?
and so I think that's what, I don't think Tom is going for the Cadillac version. I agree with option 2. It gets us in a place, and I agree also with Tom that I don't want us to do a bunch of improvements. I think it's good to leave it the way we found it. It's actually, I think, a really interesting way. We want to make sure we preserve it so it doesn't deteriorate further, but not to do, we don't want a new one. And that kind of goes into the second part of this. I don't want a replica. I like originals of things, and I get the idea that we want to celebrate. Well, we can tell that story, which will make it more special when the original comes out, and you have a way to really highlight it instead of just saying this is the one that was there and this is a replica and this is the original. I want to make it a big deal. And I like, so in that reason, I like, option two, and option one of let's make it as something special.
Can I add, I like the fact that like a story needs to be brought up with this.
100%.
And again, saying a thing that probably people don't want me to say, but this flag can elicit feelings of other things if you don't have context. And so it's really important that the story be brought out with it and that it be like readily available so that people don't presume something other than what this flag stands for.
That was a fear. That was a real fear the first night we pulled it out in the Heritage Room was there's a gold cross right dead center on it. And you don't want to offend someone because of their religion or lack of religion, right? So how do you display a flag that was made in the 40s where religion was dominant but respectful to other people's opinions? That was a real fear.
And that wasn't even the what pops into my head.
Oh,
I know what you
You
said.
know where I'm thinking? Yeah.
They're very,
It
very
looks-
rife and.
I'm not gonna say it, but like
You can say your name, right?
it's not like that's if I had no context when I walked into a library and I saw this flag and I'd say, what are we celebrating? So it has to be displayed on specific dates so that there's a connection and there's a ready story, like freestanding. Here's what it actually means, and it's not. Anyway, I just don't want it to be misinterpreted.
No, got it. And I think also treating it as something that's it's found history, even though it was in the archive. It's something that we're gonna actually, one of the biggest complaints that Tom and I have, and other people say that when you give things to the Heritage Room, they're never seen again, and people can't see them. And how you get people interested, especially younger people in history, is by exposing them to it. So if you see something that's really cool, and it's, when I first came on council, I asked Cindy, what are the most popular posts that the city does, either on social media or on their, on stories are written. And she said, number one is always history. Anything to do with history, it gets ridiculous amount of response to it. And I think because there's a hunger for it, and I think this satisfies that. And I think at least there's three of us, and I don't know who Scrooge McDuck's gonna say, but.
You guys won't shut up so I can talk, but
So I know, we'll get
He
there.
loves having the final word.
I know, he does it on purpose. So like I said, I'm in favor of two and whatever it takes to make it so it can last, and I'm in favor of option number one.
my turn.
Scrooge McDuck, go ahead.
Look,
Yeah, when I see the Photoshop of the flag hanging in the library, I think of a bunch of kids throwing stuff at the flag. And because because it's a huge target, which is probably what the 10-year-old vice mayor would have done. Or even the 45-year-old vice mayor. So, I mean, preserving it is fine, I guess. I don't really think that it needs to be hung. I wouldn't want to hang the original simply because I would be worried about damage that it could sustain because it's a ginormous flag and it's a ginormous target. And when Councilwoman Casillas was talking about, is this a pet project? Isn't it somewhere on our city seal what our motto is?
Serving the past.
Cherish it, right? I mean, and to plan our future, right? I think we spent a lot of money planning our future. In comparison, the costs to cherish this part of our past isn't a whole heck of a lot. If Councilmember Richens and the mayor continue to go into the Heritage Room and start pulling things out that then maybe it's a problem, right?
Oh, we're not done yet.
But I think a better use for this flag would be to preserve it, display it in a folded manner, and then have a picture of it so that people could see it in the actual Heritage Room. I think that'd be a more appropriate display for this particular flag, just because it's so big, and when it's hung in the library, mark my words now, because I'll tell you I told you so, someone's gonna throw something at it.
No
and
one
it's gonna-
likes that guy, by the way.
And it's gonna,
I'll
it's
just
gonna
say that.
damage it, and that's the real fear, is that you have an irreplaceable item that is just damaged, and it could be a problem.
But I don't think you guys are looking to hang it like this, right?
Well, it's the framing system. There's a couple different ways she talked about it, but it would be projected away from the rail so people couldn't come up from behind. And, I mean, there's nothing stopping anyone from throwing anything, but people
Stop a thing
pretty
throwing
much
things down.
leave displays alone in the library. I mean, there's lots of things that happen in the library, but people aren't
When I was young, Wes
destroying
was in the
things
library.
There's
like
lots
that.
of locations that we can explore in the library too, that might be, this might work, or there might be other
Oh,
programs.
well, the problem is the size of the flag, unless it's hanging, flat up against the ceiling, it's gonna be a target wherever it's at.
It's probably best up high than down low, for sure.
No, I completely get that, but like I said, it's a large flag, and so,
I say we play, I say,
Option two, on the first slide, I think we're good on that one,
Well,
right?
I would like to amend mine, cause I thought you were gonna put it on a wall somewhere. I didn't know it was gonna be this prominent. If it's gonna be this prominent, then yeah, bring it out Memorial and Veterans Day and then put it away, the rest of the year.
yeah, I think no more than 10, 15 days, a week before, week after.
And I don't think we need a replica at that point.
So for conservation options, I'm hearing
Two
number
and
two, and one is the,
Yep.
first play.
Good.
Excellent.
Great.
But can we make it the system for Veterans and Memorial Day?
Can we make it what?
For Veterans and Memorial Day, and like,
We can easily write that as the display
I don't
policy.
think there's a problem with that. That would be natural times when you'd probably bring it out.
the problem is 10 years from now, right? Like it goes away into some storage somewhere and there's not a routine.
there could be another council that decides that they don't wanna display it at all.
Yeah.
But
We
that's
can't,
for that council. This council wants to display it. And I'm with Jackie, there probably does need to be a sign underneath the flag or somewhere.
yeah, that's
And
100%.
The first time it's gonna be displayed is along with, providing she can get the work done, is along with the Memorial Day display for 2023. So it's all the context will
Yeah, that's
be
great.
there. And it will have a sign that if it gets displayed alone, we'll make sure that that's part of
There
it.
shouldn't be any pressure on you guys either. If the lady's not available until whenever. that's
Yeah,
when
it's fine.
she's
Rather do it
available.
right than do it fast. Okay,
The
great.
direction.
All right, Ms. Edwards, do you have any speaker cards for this item?
Mayor, we do not, but we did receive written comments from Herman Maypark, and his comments will be filed with the meeting.
I love you too.
Thank you very much. Okay,
I told
now I know why Jim skipped this meeting. Let's see, so our last presentation is Trails Master Plan update with Alta Planning. Moses Cartez, Facilities, Parks, and Trails Manager will present a report, and I see that we have a guest as well from Alta. Please, too.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
See you.
Great.
Hello.
Hello.
So I just have a little bit of speaking notes on my slide. Alright, so yeah, it's been a few months since we brought you guys an update, so since then we've made some really good progress, some exciting progress. Not only just with our working group, but we've had some partner agencies that we've met with in our last two meetings. So we're excited to kind of provide you guys some updates. We're just chugging right along on this master plan, so
Sweet.
I'll let Tim kind of get into the details and the weeds of it. Yes, thanks, Moses. So, yeah, I mean, that's perfect intro, so I'll just move on to the next one. Just a little bit of background to remind everyone, set the stage here. Alta's building off of two previous plans, the Trails Master Inventory and the Trails Master Plan Phase 1. Both of those were completed by a different consulting group. And we're taking that inventory and that planning exercise and filtering it through both the Trails Working Group, which is the focus of tonight's conversation, or this afternoon's conversation, and also doing a little bit of analysis and ground truthing to make certain that the recommendations from that Phase 1 carry water and resonate with the members of your community. So these visions and goals, what we have here, this is the outcome of the first master plan. So the Phase 1 master plan, this was supported by a public engagement process itself with pop-ups and community meetings and things of that nature. And these visions and goals came out of it. And notably, goal 1, making Corona the city of trails, has been articulated many times throughout our meetings as something that we want to end at. But what also comes out of these meetings is that we're not there. And part of that is that many of the trails that the members of the Trails Working Group, the constituency, want to discuss are not within the city's jurisdiction. And so what we're doing here, and I'll get into the weeds, and I welcome your questions, but it's almost as if we are making a two-pronged approach to this plan. We're looking at the outside trails, and that's about access and coordination with agencies and whatever maintenance programs Forest Service has, right? We need to make sure that we're not building bridges to nowhere. Whereas within the city, that's many of the recommendations out of the Phase 1 plan. That's more so on us to evaluate and determine what's the best to implement and what the best bang for the buck is and things like that, so that we can get an outside and inside plan that gets us towards that top line goal of making Corona the city of trails. Like I alluded to when we first met, and at the top of this meeting, we have this Trails Working Group. It's comprised of 15 to 30 people, depending on the day. We've met 4 times, 2 with the working group members themselves in this room, determining their preferences, what they like, what they don't like. Getting their feedback on the Phase 1 plan was really helpful, and filtering that through their lived experience, right? Because the Phase 1 plan, much like this plan, is created by consultants. And so we're trying to really ground truth and just get backing by your residents. So those are the first 2 to set the stage and understand where people are coming from and what their different perspectives are. I should remind the group too that that's comprised of trails, right? It's everyone out of Central Casting. So mountain bikers, trail runners, casual hikers, people that are interested in history and access, and residents that live nearby. So we have a pretty good sample set, and we've been talking through all these things with them. The second 2 meetings, so we just completed our 4th meeting last Wednesday evening here. Those second 2 meetings, the first was with the county, Riverside County Flood Control Water Conservation District, looking at some of their flood control channels that run throughout the city and determining if perhaps, as is suggested in the Phase 1 plan, maybe we can get some trails onto those maintenance roads along the flood control channels. But how does that work, right? So we invited flood control to give us a presentation, bring everyone up to speed on what that process looks like, what's realistic, what's a line on a map but not going to be built, right? And helping us just fact check all that. We also spoke with Riverside County Transportation specifically about access to Skyline and maintenance on Skyline and what that interface is with the Forest Service as well as with the county, the other side, Orange County. And we spoke with Riverside County Parks as well. That was the final group that we spoke to from the county, and that was about Santa Ana River Trail. And then we had a final meeting, our 4th
Really
meeting.
quick, you guys talked about just the Santa Ana River Trail, but it also included the Prado, the trail to Chino State Park.
Butterfield Trail and all that.
Yeah, good, great, all right, awesome. Just wanted to clarify.
Yes. And then the final meeting was with the Forest Service itself. We spoke with representatives of the National Forest and went through the same exercise. What's realistic? What are your processes and everything else along those lines?
Let me guess, they said, no, nothing's possible, don't do anything.
No, we came to yes. We got to yes. There's a long road ahead of us, but
Oh, boy.
Who's
All right,
this?
well,
Courage.
knew we
Yeah.
hired the right person. I'm gonna start crying right now.
following up the best presentation ever. So I'm trying to deliver.
No, you're killing it already. You just use getting to yes. That's like
Got a long ways to go.
it's like the magic word that's gonna come down from the ceiling.
So this
He
next
was
slide.
coach.
These are the things that we're exploring, and I want to mention too that this has been quite ad hoc, right? We go in, and we need 2x, 3 times the amount of time that we have allotted to these meetings to get into stuff. So we have our agenda, and we talk about opportunities or rating of trails, and trying to determine there's just so much to discuss, right? So part of what we're doing now is taking all that information, digesting it, and then we're going to come back to the group and of course update you as well. Some of the things that we're looking at, and this is a map that was produced by someone on the Trails Working Group, and you can see that they're considering different access points to the Cleveland National Forest, and not all of those are official or none of those are official. And what we're trying to understand is, well, what are the jurisdictional easements? Who owns that land? Who are those informal access points that the Phase 1 plan itself calls trails? Does the Forest Service consider those trails, or are they something else? And what about those access points? Are those real access points or cuts in a fence? And sometimes the real access points for the city are indeed just, you know, cuts in fences or small, not necessarily like grand trailheads, right? And so a lot of what we've been doing is just trying to get from those agencies' perspectives what it is we can actually do.
Right.
And so with all these discussions in place, and happy to dig into the details on any of these bullet points, but the most important part from the inside plan, the inside the city components, is looking at the phase 1 trail. It has about less than 30, more than 20 trails that are proposed within that phase 1 plan. We can keep all of them on the drawing board, but some number out of there, top 5, top 3, top 10, TBD, is what we're trying to do. And when I say review, you know, just what are the best bets, what's supported by the community, what might connect to something that people already love and they just want some sort of access or something formalized. We've spoken with Parks and Recreation commissioners, we've spoken with the Transportation Department in terms of how we might provide some sort of micro system or micro shuttle. So all these things are balls in the air, right? And we don't have any determinations yet. We've just been doing a lot of background research and conversations with people. We've also been looking at the newly acquired land right near the entrance of Skyline and just seeing from a conceptual design point, what can we even fit there, right? What are the design constraints? So it's right here off to the right, that's in Arroyo, right? That's a wash. So we want to be far away from that as we can, but we also want to provide access because we know that there's some trailheads right there. That's, for the Forest Service, are not trails, right? So this is what we're trying to determine right here.
That's phase 4.
I hope not. I hope we can. I hope we can put this to bed and get a pretty clear view here. So some of the next steps, planning department coordination. It came up multiple times with the Trails Working Group, also with members of the Parks and Recreation Commission. I don't recall, but possibly by this body as well. But there's a lot of discussion about what the planning implications of formalizing trails are, both on local development as well as specific homeowners, whatever that might be. Are there conditions to place upon developers? Is there even an appetite for that? All that sort of stuff we want to explore with planning. And another thing that we want to explore with the planning department is just parking. You know, it's the first thing that comes up in pretty much any discussion, right? And we want to understand the context and the long-term view for planning as it relates to parking.
Park in nature so they can get.
Yeah, exactly. So we can access nature. We have some groundwork to do with the outside agencies, getting their GIS work. And I mean, just as early as last week, or recent as last week, we see little lines that are just a little bit off. And normally, working at city scale, working at large scale, no problem. But now we're talking about these interstitial spaces and where is actually the city property line or the Forest Service lines? And do those overlap? And is there an easement? We found some conservation easements as a group using a web portal where it compiles all the different sorts of easements on public lands. And so all these sorts of things we're just figuring out. And the goal is to come back, thank you. The goal is to come back in the new year with all the information that we've gathered, just distilled, and present that back to the Trails Working Group and then continue onward. So thank you for your time and welcome your questions.
Jackie.
No questions. I just gotta say how much I really love that the Trails Working Group is. I mean, you alluded to the fact that your meetings, go on because there's so much to discuss. Like, it makes me really happy as a city leader that we have residents that are so involved and invested in seeing this come to fruition that they'll sit through and joyously engage in this kind of conversation.
In person on a weeknight
Yeah.
until 7 p.m.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the epitome of an empowered community, right? So that makes me really, really, really happy.
They're in the driver's seat.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, all you healthy hiking people, it seems like that's all you want around here is now we have to have a council member going for that. And what's next? Running trails, bike paths, bike lanes. No, I'm all for it. Good job. Second best presentation.
I was super interested when I drove up Skyline. That was much more enjoyable because none of the people that were hiking up Skyline seemed to be enjoying themselves. It looked very grimacing.
Is that like people who line dance? They're never smiling either.
Well, and it was and Moses was there. It was an interesting cross section of people that were on that trail, including the person that had a full ski mask on.
Kind of creepy.
That was very interesting. So I'm excited to see where this is going. Looks like it's headed in the right direction or several directions.
Cool. I love this map because this shows how the level of decision or the level of analysis that's going on, and that's really cool that we're encouraging that. My biggest fear with this was that we were gonna, keep refocusing people back into just the city and just these other areas. And I love the fact that we're talking to the Forest Service. And because, when we first brought this up, my whole idea, at least one of my ideas was about that if we can find a way, and I hate using the word exploit, but we have this 12 miles of, border with the forest. And I get from a conservation standpoint, I always say I'm not a wildlife biologist, but I play one at work. That you don't want a bunch of people traipsing around, in wild places because they tend to destroy things because people are people. But at the same time, how do you get in touch with nature without actually being in nature? So I wanted to find this interface to be able to provide access, and two, provide a way for us to work with the Forest Service to help fund some things, help either it's selling green stickers or it's, finding ways to generate revenue for them in order to help these trails be taken care of, or that we can assist with, with residents and the more of those interactions instead of, I work on the Mojave National Preserve sometimes, and the leadership in that particular reserve, they would rather than to close it all off, and we'll let you in when we think it's right. And I'm a person that wants to see people use it, and I think that we've got to find a way for us to, that we have people that, they're interested how they want to use it, and then marrying that with what's acceptable and how we can, pay for it. So yeah, this is great. I'm really happy to see that and seeing so many people that are interested in the working group. I have no idea who they are, and I want to thank them all for their service. I know some of the names because I've referred a few people as well, and I hear they're spirited. And they have a couple different directions, but I'm excited to see kind of what comes out of this. And I'll say it again, Alta's a wonderful firm. You guys do really great work, and I'm excited that you're on the team.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If I may, I just want to call out something that's important. That map that you're referring to, that was produced by someone on the Trails Working Group, and that was slide 1 of 50. I mean, like with photos, and we've got other people sending me just random snapshots from a trail access point on a ride on a Wednesday. Like all this information we're being inundated with is really, it's beyond the pale in terms of public engagement. Like your constituents are really, really tied in. And the second point I want to raise, that kind of going off what you're saying, is that one of the things that we came to with the Forest Service and the Trails Working Group is that Skyline is impacted. And there's effects on the residents that live nearby. There's also effects on the trail users and their experience there. And then we know that there are other trails to the north and south that also access the Cleveland National Forest that either just don't have a parking lot or don't have a sign or whatever it might be. On the Forest Service side, maybe it's a fire break and not a trail, right? And so solving for that is part of our focus here, where we're just trying to distribute the impact so that it's mutually beneficial both to the Forest Service, to the residents, to the people that want to ride their bikes, and everyone else in between.
And the other part that comes from a map like this is that, I had a resident that had called me about a road and said, hey, it says private road. And then meanwhile, I found out, no, it's actually it's a city, we own the right of way, it's our right of way, and these people just put up a sign because they didn't want people there. And then found another road that people put a gate up and to block people out. So it's cool to be able to truth some of those things too, and get feedback to not only the folks that want to use this area, but the people who have claimed it as their own.
Yeah.
So.
You really did put a gate?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Ms. Edwards, do we have any speaker cards for this item?
We do not.
All right, so then we will stand adjourned until city council meeting of October 19th. Thank you. you all.
Happy birthday to Tom.
Happy birthday, Tom.